Donald Trump's announcement of a major deal with Iran to fully open up the Strait of Hormuz has backfired in Donald Trump's face because it's all a gigantic fraud. I cannot believe that the markets and the media still fall for this. Although Trump is clearly manipulating the markets, earlier this morning Donald Trump announced that the Strait of Hormuz is now fully open, that the United States will control it, that the United States will be sending excavators into Iran, working with the Iranian army in order to collect all of the uranium and all of the so-called nuclear dust to bring it back to the United States. That Iran will no longer be funding any of its proxies, including Hezbollah, that the US will not be giving Iran any money at all, and that there will be free passage right now in the Strait of Hormuz, and everything is incredible. Donald Trump picked up the phone. He called the reporters at CBS, at Reuters, of course, his buddy Barak Ravid over at Axios, and other reporters as well. And they all just published what Donald Trump said verbatim, like they were his stenographer on that basis. The markets roared, or I should say were manipulated. And people here in the United States assumed that the Strait of was probably open because at least some credible journalists were reposting what Donald Trump was dictating to them. To me, that's journalistic malpractice. We did not do that here at the MeidasTouch network because that's not what was taking place. If we actually looked at the shipping data, if we looked at what was going on in the Strait of Hormuz, what we noticed were ships starting to go through the Strait of Hormuz and then making an immediate U-turn and turning back. You could literally follow the shipping data to see what happened. A mass turnaround, all of these ships heard this message from Donald Trump. But what became clear is that what the Iranians were saying was very different from what Donald Trump was saying. If you actually looked at the Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi's post, he did indeed say that the Strait of Hormuz would be open subject to coordination by Iran through a pre-approved route, meaning you have to take these ships through an area controlled by Iran, where Iran would charge tolls and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard would make the decision if ships could leave or not leave. This was basically the status quo before Donald Trump made that announcement and called up all of the reporters. And then we should listen to what's actually happening on the ground, the facts, not what Donald Trump is saying. We should study the facts of what is happening, because now this disaster has taken place where Trump's made this announcement that there's a deal. There really isn't a deal. And now the chance of escalation, the chance of an interaction between Iran and, let's say, a ship listening to Donald Trump's advice, which could lead to some, potential attacks, or who knows what will happen, that exponentially increases. Let's take a look at what Iran's parliament leader and the lead negotiator, MB Ghalib, said is actually happening. He posts the following. The President of the United States made 7 claims in 1 hour, all 7 of which were false. They did not win the war with these lies, and they will certainly not get anywhere in negotiations either. With the continuation of the blockade, the Strait of Hormuz will not remain open. Passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be conducted based on the designated route and with Iranian authorization. Whether the strait is open or closed, and the regulations governing it will be determined by the field, not by social media. Media warfare and engineering public opinion are an important part of war, and the Iranian nation is not affected by these tricks. Read the real and accurate news of the negotiations in the recent interview of the Foreign Ministry spokesperson. So we have that. I want to share with you what the Iranian spokesperson said. Now here's the thing. You may be wondering, well, Ben, I get it. Iran is saying that. But even as their parliament leader, MB Ghalib, says, media warfare and engineering public opinion is an important part of war. So, Ben, you want us to believe the Iranian side of the story over the Trump side of the story? Setting aside the fact that Donald Trump lies about everything, and I think you can never believe the Trump side of the story. For me, it's not. Do you believe the Iranian side of the story? To me, it's, do you believe what's really happening? So I'm looking at the shipping data. Are more ships going through the Strait of Hormuz? Is the Strait of Hormuz really open such that not the route that goes right by the Iranian coast is being used? That ships are free to go, like what was taking place before Donald Trump's unlawful and catastrophic war took place? Also, why would we even be spiking the football in the United States? Like, this is a win that the Strait of Hormuz is open when it was open before Donald Trump and Netanyahu launched their unlawful and catastrophic war in Iran. I want to look at what's happening in Lebanon. Is there really a ceasefire in Lebanon? Or am I observing Israel hitting targets in Lebanon and Israel hitting innocent civilians in Lebanon? And that's what's taking place. I have videos, I have photos of that. So I know that's what's taking place as well. So I just want to use an objective lens to see what is actually happening here. And when you do, you see that the Strait of Hormuz is still under the control of Iran. There's not American excavators that are going in to get nuclear material in Iran. That's not happening. And Iran says that will never happen. Are American military ships going through the Strait of Hormuz? No. Iran says they are banned. So what's actually happened? I mean, let's observe. So let's talk about the latest statement from Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson, which was referenced in that by MB Ghalib. And here's what they say. So Iran pushed for a Lebanon ceasefire based on the April 8th framework. A ceasefire took effect last night after extensive efforts. It was agreed that Iran's commitments, unchanged from April 8th, would therefore be implemented, including coordination of commercial vessel traffic with Iran. Words have meaning. What Iran is saying is we're not deviating from the 10-point framework that we previously announced and that Trump previously agreed to. There's nothing different that is happening. We said that we would allow coordinated commercial vessel traffic. Words have meaning. Coordinated means it goes through the route approved by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Commercial vessels mean non-military ships. We're not going to allow US military ships, and it's coordinated with Iran. Each of these words has very important meaning. Let's also talk about what's said over here. Ship movement through the Strait of Hormuz will follow routes set by Iran and be coordinated with relevant authorities. He warned against media narratives from the opposing side, saying Iran will enforce measures to protect its interests without compromise. A US naval blockade will be considered a violation of the ceasefire and would trigger a response. No discussions have taken place so far about extending the ceasefire. Iran's focus remains on securing conditions for a full end to the war. Control over these Strait of Hormuz, they said, will be determined on the ground, not in media and social media narratives. Enriched uranium will not be transferred anywhere under any circumstance. Iran's armed forces are responsible for enforcing transit measures in the strait. Any naval blockade will be met with a proportional Iranian response. Claims by the US president about direct talks with Iranian officials are false. Recent meetings with the Pakistani delegation clarified areas of agreement and remaining red lines. Officials said innovative bilateral solutions may be possible in some areas while others remain non-negotiable. Iran says there is now no ambiguity on negotiation topics. Recent talks between Pakistani mediators and senior Iranian officials have made positions clear, and this round differs significantly from previous ones. While past negotiations focused on the nuclear file, current talks are centered on ending the war, expanding the scope to include issues like the Strait of Hormuz. Talks in Islamabad were held between Iran's parliamentary speaker and Begaliba in the US vice president, mediated by Pakistan. Any other claims of direct talks between US and Iranian officials are false. Ending the war involves multiple components, including sanctions relief, compensation for war damages, and guarantees that hostilities will fully cease. Proposed in Iran's 10-point plan, Iran insists all resistance elements across all fronts must be treated as a single unit and cannot be separated. And so Iran is putting forward its non-negotiables right there that you see. Iran told mediators it will continue to limit the number of ships allowed to cross the Strait of Hormuz and that it will also charge tolls for the remaining period of the ceasefire, according to the Wall Street Journal. And also what just took place, which is important to mention as well, is in the middle of the night. One of the things that we just learned is the US dropped a Friday night notice lifting sanctions on Russian oil for another month. This comes just 2 days after Treasury Secretary Bessent said the US would not renew the waiver. It's important to note everything out of the Trump regime is a lie. Quite literally everything. Remember when Scott Bessent said in a press conference, we will not be allowing the removal of sanctions to be extended against Russia. Well, the notice lifting the sanctions on Russian oil for another month are now in effect. So there are no sanctions on Russian oil. Russia got a big win when Bessent said this previously. Play this clip. My question. Are you considering any more sanctions relief, Mr. Secretary, for countries that are suffering right now in order to get more oil to your allies? We will not be renewing the general license on Russian oil, and we will not be renewing the general license on Iranian oil. Again, that was oil that was on the water prior to March 11th. So all that has been used. Now, we should also note the following, and this is what Barak Ravid at Axios writes, and again, he's very close to Netanyahu as well. He said, Trump shocked Netanyahu with a post declaring Lebanon strikes are prohibited. Israel asked the White House for clarification, sources said. To which this other account, Mark Polyamopoulos, writes, Trump humiliates his best buds. This is political suicide for any Israeli prime minister to adhere to this. I don't care who it is. The idea of not being able to take action on your borders is untenable. Bibi, of course, deserves this humiliation, as he has been on his knees to Trump for perpetuity. Shortly thereafter, Barak Ravid, after reaching out to Netanyahu, posting that says the following. A US official clarifies Trump's Lebanon comments. The president's ceasefire agreement between Lebanon and Israel clearly states that Israel will not carry out any offensive military operations against Lebanese targets, but preserves its right to self-defense against planned, imminent, or ongoing attacks. In other words, Israel is just going to say that everything is self-defense against planned, imminent, or ongoing attacks. So Israel continued to bomb and demolish homes in Lebanon moments ago. Multiple Lebanon-based journalists are reporting, and DropSite confirms Trump had told Axios earlier that he wants Israeli strikes on Lebanon to end, but then clarified and said, well, I didn't really mean that. Meanwhile, the New York Times reports that there are multiple other sites, like the Pix Mountain site and others in Iran, that seem to be a location where Iran may be developing nuclear weapons and enrichment is taking place. But Donald, even in Donald Trump's best case scenario, what he and Iran are negotiating now is voluntary compliance for Iran, where Iran just says, hey, we're doing it, we're not enriching uranium nuclear grade, and then that's basically enough. So reporters, in conclusion, please stop just quoting Donald Trump, whether it's Kelly Meyer. I just spoke with Donald Trump on phone while he was in Las Vegas. I got right to the point and I asked him, has Iran agreed to stop enriching uranium? Yes, he told me they agreed to stop enriching uranium. They agreed to everything. Yes. Are you surprised? I'm not surprised by anything. I'll see you later. Or Donald Trump telling CBS, Iran's agreed to everything. They're going to work with the United States to remove its buried stockpile of highly enriched uranium. No troops, no troops. We're going to go down. We're going to take it. We're going to go in there with excavators, right? No need for any fighting, right? That's better. That's better. We would